Hey guys, welcome back. It's your favorite Gimp with a Limp, and I'm here with a treat that I know some of you guys have been looking forward to seeing. Obviously, this is Combat Volume 1, which means Volume 2 should be out relatively soon, I am hoping. This game is designed by Ross Mortel and obviously published by Compass Games. Now, I'm going to do this video a little different than I normally do them. I usually have Gimpy's Gal do a little guess on it. That way you guys can kind of see the unboxing done a little different way. But she's just not got the time to get that done right now. So unfortunately, we're not going to have a guesses. So this is going to be like an overview of it, right? Kind of go over the basics of the game. That way, when we pick up on the next video, we'll actually start getting into it and start playing it. Now, I've got another reason I'm kind of doing it that way, but we'll touch on that as we go over the components. Obviously, we got our rulebook, and the rulebook is a hell of a lot smaller than I would have been expecting for a game like this. Now, this is a game of tactical man-to-man combat set in World War II, and it's completely solitaire, right? So it's designed purely for solitaire play. And games like that tend to have very long rule books because you have to have so many conditions for the AI to operate. Now, this one doesn't. Goes to 32, and that's including all the appendix and index and all the other good stuff. There's not a whole lot of actual rules in it. You guys can see it's not that densely packed, right? But part of the thing is, and this is why I think we've got what I'm getting ready to show you, is that the rulebook isn't hard to understand, but it's not hard for me to understand. And it probably wouldn't be too hard for some of you to understand. I hate to kind of say it this way because I don't like to start with a nag, but there's a lot of good stuff going for this game. But the rulebook's kind of written like they expect you to have played war games before and extensively. Like it's written from a perspective almost of expecting you to have certain pre-knowledge before you come into reading this, right? And I don't like it when a rule book does that because you always have to assume that the person playing the game has never played any games before, any board games, whatever. They need to be able to pick up this book, whatever rule book it is for whatever game, be able to read through it and play the game. Now, can you do that with this? Yes, but there is included with the game a fair amount of errata. Now, I do appreciate the fact that they have nice professional errata here for you to use. It's, saying stuff that the player aids are made out of, but there's a fair amount of it. Now, the first bits of it, just normal errata, right? That's fine. Every game's going to have that. Doesn't matter what game it is. You're going to have some misspelled word or something that gets written wrong. When you're designing this stuff and making it, the same people reading over it time and time and time again, there could be a glaring error right there in front of you, and you're not going to see it just because you're so enamored with it. You've read it so many times, your mind automatically sees it the other way. That's fine. Stuff like that's going to be in here, so I'm not wholly worried about that. But when we get in here and get on this, see, so the first part is for the rule book, and then just things that should be different in the rule book. Like, just an example, like it should say this instead. Place the compass counter in hex 1902 with one pointing towards whatever hex, right? And that's actually a big deal for this game. So, rule book, scenario book, and then it gets into clarifications. Clarifications is the rest of this book, right? And I still haven't gone all the way through this. I need to make sure and read through it all the way. I gave it a nice cursory glance after I'd gone through the rule book. And I've read through the rule book a couple of times now, and I'm probably going to have to read through it again before I really start getting to playing this. But this part is where I'm talking about that the rule book seems like it was written for non-layman's, right? People who will understand certain aspects about this game intrinsically. So I think that's why so many things have to be clarified in here that, well, we just expect you to understand X, Y, or Z. But people didn't just understand that, so it had to be clarified. Okay, so I'm inserting this just little piece in after I've recorded the video, just as a little addendum that I wanted to add in, because I felt kind of like I was being a little overly critical over this. What I want to add to it is the fact that the clarifications are in here, right? To me, shows that they learned from their mistake and they took the steps to rectify it, right? And they didn't just put it up online and say, hey, go download it from there. They actually got it professionally printed, nice, player aid type stock material, just like the rest of the game, and they put it in the game. That way it's there for you and you don't have to do anything else. What you need to know is already included in the game. So I don't want you guys to think that I'm like hating on them really, really hard over this thing of errata. I don't mind someone making a mistake. Everyone's human. Everyone makes mistakes, right? It's how they handle the mistake that I judge them on. And they handled this mistake well. They saw it. They paid attention. Like, okay, we kind of goofed here a little bit with the rules. What's the best way we can go about correcting this? And that's something I got to give to Compass. Anytime they have had an issue like this before, they have gone out of their way to rectify it as best as they can in the player's favor, right? Whether it's sending them updated counters, updated cards, player aids, putting a new player aid in the game, whatever choice they made, they're going out of their way to give the player the best experience possible. So again, yes, this was a problem with the game, but they did rectify it. So I do want to make sure and give them props for rectifying it the way that they did. Now, we'll get into this a little more specifically when we get into the game itself. But I do want you guys to forgive me when we're playing through our little scenario here if I do make a mistake, because my memory is not perfect. So I'm not faulting Compass for this. I never fault a company for having errata. But I think some of this, like the first couple of pages, are not a problem, right? Those aren't a problem because that's going to happen, like I said, with any game. But I think these clarifications could have been rectified with maybe a little more playtesting. And I would almost suggest playtesting by people who don't know, like someone like myself or Mo or Kev or any of the other wargame people who know war games, and we kind of spend a lot of time learning them. We would probably be the people you wouldn't want to play test this, because we'll probably make that same mistake, right? So having someone who doesn't have as much experience would probably be a better route to go to avoid having that happen in the future. Now, for the actual game itself, the components, it's fairly meaty, but not overly meaty. I've got one of the maps set out, the map that I'm going to be playing on here in just a little bit, and they're nice maps. They look good on the table. I got to give them credit for that. But there's only a few player aids for it, a couple of card decks, which were nicely separated, as in this was in a plastic pouch and this was in plastic wrap. I much prefer it that way than when I get a game and the damn game has the cards mixed up in the packs. So I have to open them all up and figure out which one goes with which. And I get it if, there's only a small amount of cards for this and that. They can't wrap them all separately. But when they are wrapped separately, so we've got our friendly cards and our enemy cards, and they're ready to go as soon as I take them out of the plastic. That's so cool. I love it when they do that. All right, so for the game itself, got a nice player aid, boom, sequence of play, which does have just a tiny bit of errata for it, but nothing too big. And then in the middle, we get into our charts. This has to do with your order and terrain and your modifiers. Spotting down here with its modifiers. We'll get into all this when we start playing the game. But the big thing is in this game is what order you're given, whether it's you or the enemy. So you see things like hide, rally, reload, sneak, evade, duck back, aimed, rapid fire, suppressive fire, reload, belt fed, running gun, sprint. So all of these here at the top, these are orders that your troops can be given or the enemy troops can be given, right? So there's little counters that go on these guys. It's real cool, marks them what they're doing, and then depending on what they're doing and potentially what terrain they're in is going to affect all the modifiers, just kind of like you would expect for any other war game. So that part's easy. Range and the modifier down there. Spotting, your guys and the enemies are not automatically considered spotted as soon as you got them in line of sight, just like many other war games out there. Sometimes you do have to make a spotting check to see if you can actually see the enemy or if they can see you. That's where you're going to get into this. And in the back, we have a nice little display of the different types of weapons, which I really like this because this gives me that ambush feel when I'm looking at these little charts here. I like the games because it's kind of like Warfighter, right? Where you get to outfit your troops. Now, this one, you don't get to outfit the troops specifically, but you do have, in some of the scenarios, some choice on who you're going to bring, which gives you a little bit of variance. But I always love it when we get down into the individual weapons that the units are using when they're out there doing that. Love the man-to-man stuff because we don't see enough man-to-man games. That's why I was really looking forward to getting this one. So we got things like the M1 Grand, which is going to be your standard weapon for the Allies, obviously. The grease gun, the bar, which is your automatic weapon, 1911, so a lot of your units do have pistols. And then the Mark 1919, which was the 30 caliber machine gun, the grenade launcher, and then the U.S. hand grenade. So these all appear white because they're the Allied, and then black here at the bottom are the enemy units and what they're using. So like Car 98 is their specific type of weapon. But as something that you notice, like look right there, bam, rate of fire 1, same as the M1 Grand, but we know that Car 98 was a bolt action weapon, so it's got slow on it. So that actually changes the certain types of orders that you can give. You can't give this something like rapid fire because obviously couldn't do rapid fire. Really cool, love that stuff. So for each of your different guys when they're using weapons, bam, you can see here, nice easy chart to look at to see the modifiers they're going to apply at different ranges. Like your M1 Grand, for example, if you're 0 to 1 hexes away, you're going to get a +2. But if you're at max range, 25 to 50 hexes away, you're going to get a -4 to your check to actually hit. So it's going to be very hard to hit at far range, really easy to hit it close. Our other player aids, because the key thing on a game like this where it's solitaire is going to be things like initiative and who's going when. That's where this track and this track, the impulse and initiative track, are going to come in. We'll show you the counters here in just a sec that help you differentiate that so you can keep track of it, how many turns the game is. I think we're doing a 5-round game, so nothing big. Stack overflow, and here at the bottom, this is basically where your draw cards are. So you can have those. Enemy deck, discard pile, friendly initiative. You're going to be putting your initiative card on there. One of the things, like I was mentioning earlier, though, the rulebook took your knowledge of these as like a given. So one of the things that I've noticed with a well-written rulebook is that if you read it, you don't necessarily have to have the game sitting out in front of you to understand what they're talking about. This game, you do have to have that sitting out in front of you. Because I always learn games the same way. I'll read the rulebook once, and then I crack open the game, and I read through it again, taking that knowledge I learned from the first time with the components in front of me. But I do think you should be able to learn the game without having the components directly in front of you. So whether it requires putting a picture in the rulebook or something to help you out, I think that would have saved a little bit of confusion and clarifications. So the initiative track here where we're talking about the cards like your enemy squads, friendly initiative, that is going to be coming into play with these cards. And if we look at an example of our friendly initiative here, basically the lower the number, the sooner you're going to go when it's your turn in the impulse, right? Just that easy. Sometimes you're going to have events that take off and you can potentially play these cards as like one-off bonuses as well. You guys will see that. And then also down here at the bottom, you see things like close call, KIA, light wound, heavy wound, or bad wound. These are also going to be the cards that you're going to draw when someone's shot, someone's hit, to see what type of wound that they receive. So I like it when you have cards that take and do multiple things. This is giving your initiative. This is giving you potential events. This is giving you bonuses that you can play for your troops. And it's also your wound deck to determine how badly someone is hit. All in one go. Love that. the German order cards. So these, and speaking of which, they're nice. You guys can hear that. Nice and thick, got a real good feel to them. So component quality is good. This is what you're going to draw to determine what the enemy is going to do. You see it listed down, and it depends. Are they in cover or are they open? And what is their morale level? All the way from aggressive to shaken, normal being the medium one. And then over here to the right, you guys see that there are some letters there like G or C. Has to do with things like throwing grenades. You'll have checks to see if they're in a position to actually do that. Bottom right as well is their initiative. Now, depending on your scenario, you're either going to draw one of these per enemy troop themselves, so like man-to-man for each card, or you're going to draw it for each one of the teams. It depends if you're doing like a large match or just a regular match. But the enemies are color-coded, so there's yellow team, white team, red team, blue team. The one we're going to play is just going to have red team and blue team, so we are going to be drawing a card per enemy character instead of just doing one order card for the red team and then one order card for the blue team. Now, this is where we're also going to put their initiative cards, right? So what we're going to do is, just as an example, we would, have there, the red team there, blue team there, and then like our card right there, just like that. And that would show us our initiative. So we would compare those numbers, and whoever had the lowest number going in order would determine who's going to go win. And you'll keep track of it on this nice little initiative track. Real easy once you actually get the hang of things on how to actually play the game. So let's look at the counters themselves, which are really nice. That way you guys will see much better how this game is going to be played. So the gray order counters are for the Germans. The green ones are for the U.S. forces. So all these small counters you're going to put onto a unit, and you notice they have 4 numbers going across the bottom of them, okay? So when you put that on a unit for aimed fire, as an example, it's 0101. That has to do with this impulse track. So as we do the first impulse, you're looking at the first number, second impulse, second number, third impulse, third, and so on. And you're going to do that. So as the initiative track goes, when we start with impulse 1, we're going to go in initiative order, do all of impulse 1. Start impulse 2, we're going to start at the beginning of the initiative track again, do all of impulse 2. So slowly you'll see the turn kind of play out. I think it's an ingenious way they came up with to kind of simulate what's all going on during a small few second period of time. And it's laid out nice and succinctly here on the player aid, so you can keep track of it. If you just go with it slow, just walk it down, you should be fine with it. Now, the enemies do have the ability to be alert or not paying attention, like I forget what it's, waiting status or something like that. Let's see if it says it on the back. Yeah, waiting here on the back. We'll get into that when we get into the game. These counters on the right are like administrative counters, have to do with your morale, whether your unit's normal, bold, cautious, routing, things like that. And if we look closely here, you see that they do have the ability to have modifiers, and they can reduce your chance to hit, your skill levels with certain weapons, all that type stuff. So cool stuff. You can run out of ammo as well. I like that. Has to do when you're making your checks with your firing. If you roll a natural 9, depending on the weapon, some weapons don't run out of ammo. You'll get a low ammo. Do it again, you're going to be out of ammo, which means you have to do things in a very good sequence. Here's our little counters for each one of the teams. So when we're going on that initiative track, we're going to have that listed, and then our ABC for Alpha, Beta, Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie. I say Beta. And these counters with these counters is going to determine our initiative. So got those. Another whole counter sheet just full of orders. I know this looks like a lot, but divide them out real easy. All the stuff we were just talking about, running gun, evading, sneaking, all that good stuff, sprint. We need a lot of German counters because they can potentially have a lot of units on the board. It makes me kind of worried about winning because they can have a lot of counters on the board. More administrative counters, and you guys can see obviously things like smoke from grenades or off-board munitions coming on, good stuff. And then here, wound counters for wounded units. You see those do also have negative implications for the units, like a bad wound will severely limit a unit, reducing their leadership, their troop quality, their weapon skills. We'll explain what each one of those mean here in a sec. But you can bandage them, which is good stuff if you have a medic with you. And we see here the counters, the orders for your units. So green ones for your units. Ducking back, getting out of the way. Grenades, flares, mortars, guarding the enemy. These counters will be on the board. These have to do with directions for things like wind, like if smoke's blowing, or the orders that the German units are receiving. That way, the scenario will tell you where to put these counters and what direction to have them facing in. That way you know when you're looking at their order cards that the enemy's going to predominantly be pushing in this direction or that direction or whichever way they're going. Ingenious way that they came up with of controlling the enemy. I really like that. And there's the backs of those. Now what I like is these are the small counters. These are the big counters. These are the actual unit counters. And I love it when they have nice big counters, because when these over here are the same size as these, then it makes it to where everything starts to kind of blend together. Not a problem here. These counters are full inch counters, so you can have all that information that you need. Now let's bring it in close here and not get my light on it too much. But as an example, you see Abel up here, Sergeant Taylor, the black square with the white number in it, that's his leadership. So you see, not everyone has leadership abilities. Just the leaders, the squad leaders are going to have that skill. And then the red number or the white number in the red square, which everyone has, including the enemy troops, is your troops quality. Think of it like his, well, it's basically how good he is, right? The higher that number, the better, the easier it is to pass whatever check it is that you're trying to make and hit targets, throw grenades, be successful at anything that you're trying to do. It's pretty much compared against that number. Now, when you're making an attack with a weapon, that's where the numbers underneath it. And if you see the little symbols there, show you exactly what weapons they're carrying, which I just love that. So you see he's got a grease gun, grenades, and a pistol. Pistols can't run out of ammo in this game. Same with Mayfield right below him, but then we've got some guys, they're just your privates, just your regular troops that have rifles and grenades that they're going to be using. But you see their skills aren't quite as good. You know, they're the privates, they're not the sergeants. So we have Abel, Baker, and Charlie as our different squads that we're going to be using in the game. The Germans, like I said, they have 4 teams. They're all color-coded, yellow, white, red, and blue. When we're playing our little scenario here in a sec, we're going to be using these guys, and they have potential dummies. So depending on your scenario, those dummies can be used as, like in the scenario we're going to play, they're actually hidden Charlie team members, which I think is so cool. But obviously they can just be like basic dummies that, you know, there's no one there. You thought there was an enemy troop there, but they're actually not. Before you identify them though, they're going to be back like this. That way you can't tell if it's a troop, but if it's whoever, and then you'll have to turn it over to determine whether or not that is an actual person or not. And then we have a big directional marker here at the bottom, impulse marker, good stuff. So just as an example, let's see if we'll move this forward and I'll zoom in a little bit on screen. We're going to take our little squad of guys in this mission and we're going to be pushing through, and we're trying to get over here to this church. And spread throughout is going to be some German soldiers who are just hanging out. They got to this town, this small little village before we did. So we're going to try to sneak in, get as close as we can, open fire, try to take them out, and then get there. And then as we get there, some of these German units are actually going to be dummies, and we'll roll off, and we might be able to find some Charlie team members that can join us and help push on it. And we'll get points for killing the Germans, having our guys make it to the objective, finding Charlie team members, all that good stuff. All right, so when we pick up here, we're going to pick up with the actual game. And actually, let me pop one of these out just so you guys can see how thick these are, because these are nice and thick counters, and they pop out nicely, so you don't have to round them if you don't want to. They do have that little bit of an edge right there, so you can round them if you want, but they look good on the table. Actually, pull here, fit right there in the square, so perfect. Nice counters. Component quality is good. You got 4 maps, a couple of card decks. Maps aren't mounted, obviously they are paper maps. But with as much as this game costs already, I definitely would not want to be paying for mounted maps on top of that cost. All right, so that's just a quick down and dirty basic overview of the game. It's going to get a lot more in depth with it. I will tell you, from what I've seen so far, it is tickling my fancy. I love solitaire games. I love the man-to-man type games themselves, and then being able to pick the orders for your guys. It's almost kind of like a puzzle in a way. You're trying to figure out the best way to do it. Do I want to come in fast, running and gunning, and trying to get to the enemy before they figure out exactly what's going on? Or do I want to take my time and sneak my guys in and then hit them hard? Or do I want to take and try to hit them with suppressive fire to keep their heads down as I have a small advanced team move in and start picking them off with aim fire? You have the ability to make these choices for yourself, but the enemy is going to react to you, and they're going to react to you based on the choices that you've made. Because like I was showing you guys, these enemy cards are conditional based on certain things. And it goes on over in the rulebook, and that is one thing I would have liked to have seen actually in the player aid, maybe. So just to show you what I mean, let's flip to it here, where it talks about the orders. So it talks about all the German orders. Now it does the same thing for the US side, but this is when the enemy is going to do this, or what they're going to do in these circumstances if they receive evade, sprint, charge. I would have maybe liked to have seen this, like some of this, onto a player aid. Not necessarily all of it, because a lot of it is very similar to what's going on with the U.S. forces anyway. But maybe, how it's going to work with grenades for the AI, stuff like that, because there are a few exceptions when it comes to their rules. But you guys will see all that here in the next video. If you have any specific questions about the game or stuff you want to know, feel free to put it down in the comments. We're going to play through one of the first scenarios in it, like I was just explaining to you, trying to get the U.S. troops into the church. That way you guys can see how the system operates. All right, but that's going to be it for me. You guys take care. I'll see you in the next one.